Any public comment?
Fundraising?
Yes, this is the ad hoc fundraising committee meeting.
Hello, Claire Steinberg, East Rock Hill. I'm from Temple Judea, or with the Synagogue Temple Judea in Bucks County. And for fundraiser, what we do, or what we have done with our old rabbi, is had a pie shop contest. I thought maybe we could get some, for the fundraising, the board members, maybe the administration together, do a fundraiser to help. No, I'm serious, raise money. The little like elementary kids, $1, high schoolers $5, adults $20, $25.
Are we the target? Is that the deal?
Well, you get the school board, you get the administration.
Wow. Here's your big chance, guys.
What kind of revenue do they generate? How much?
Well, we're a small synagogue, so we got $300.
When do they do it?
We do it for our Purim carnival. And
A certain time of the year when you have a
yeah, and
fundraising?
the rabbi is behind the plastic. The little kids go up and throw it at them.
Much like some do dunk tanks.
Right, it's a lot colder in March, February. But I thought, that's a good fundraising thing. I thought of that and I said, oh, I should bring that up tonight.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are you volunteering?
I need to know what flavor pies we're choosing. That might make a difference.
Jeff's not here, so do we want to go to number 3?
Jeff is not going to be here. What
Okay.
I did was included the information from him about some of the sponsorship. He had talked at the last meeting, he was going to investigate about somebody possibly doing some donation of either pavers or of an area that could be paved right behind the home side to the left where there's basically just the weeds they keep brush hog down. So I'm just sharing the information so you can look it over. If there are questions, I think he's going to continue pursuing whether he can get the blocks for free, and then he's working on that. So it was just information that followed from last meeting. I stuck it on there along with information that I'll get to later from number 5 that Kathy sent me about people that promote campaigns.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I did talk to Jeff today. I mean, Landis Club, it's not, he said they expressed interest, but it's not a definite, so do we need to take any sort of
What do they need
Yeah,
at
what do
this
they,
point?
yeah.
Like,
I would say you can't take action because you don't have a proposal. So the issue is we have pavers, and the pavers that we're selling, part of the cost of the pavers to have them made is in there. If you get somebody who donates it, obviously there's more money you're going to make for the campaign. So you're going to have something separate, an agreement that you could say, yes, we'll vote on that, but that really ought to be separate. What's most important is that you set your standards for the dollar amounts for your sponsorship, your donations, and your advertisement, so that the board can act on that. Joe has drafted a brochure, and what will happen is you'll get a chance to get that brochure out there, but you have to set the prices. If there are other special arrangements like that, such as also if you want the booster clubs to be able to sell and make some sort of money, you'll have to set that for later as well. So the most important thing for tonight is give you information, but also make sure that you're at this point ready to make some decisions on item 3. I'm just sharing information on 2 with you.
I have a question, please. When we, in our discussion at the August board meeting, we were told that we needed to make some decisions latest September board meeting in order to determine, and I think the primary issue was the parking lot, whether we would include the parking lot or not. As far as the site plan, I think that was the only item that was mentioned as something that could be make a difference in the money we save if we choose to do it or not do it. I really haven't heard any input from anyone to the board on pros and cons, the cost-benefit ratio of the parking lot.
Well, I'm not talking about the parking lot. I'm just talking about.
I know you're not, and maybe this is a little bit off the subject, but anticipating the meeting on the 22nd, that's a decision that we're apparently going to have to make, and so far we've had no real input for us to consider the cost-benefit ratios on the parking lot, and it would mean that Jeff or somebody should try to prepare something for us for the meeting that would allow us to understand, again, cost-benefit, what amount of money is it going to cost if we choose not to do it, and what value is it going to provide. We know that there's going to be some, again, the idea was to drop the kids off there, team and the rest, and then go park somewhere else. I guess there was going to be some limited handicap parking up there, so people didn't have to walk so far. There were some alternatives presented, like maybe running the golf cart service that would take care of the same thing. And until we have some information that would help us to understand which of these alternatives would be meaningful, it would be really difficult for us to make a decision. So is there any way that you could help us with that decision?
I can help you with that by asking Kathy Johnson if she can give that to Jeff. So, because I know very little about that.
Thank you.
Because Bruce, what you're talking about here, and Dave, I know you received the email, was
Yeah, I
a
understand.
separate area altogether. And
Correct.
this is basically a proposal of a donation by
Correct.
contractor.
Correct,
Similar with the pavers.
correct.
I understand that.
I expect that you will get other offers, that will donate this, in exchange for, and you can certainly do those one at a time. We were trying to focus on the big pieces that you had set as a board, as the ad hoc committee, about, your price for your pavers, your advertising, some things we can actually go out and start hitting the bricks and see, is there interest out there? And we know there is some interest, but until we actually have the board say, these are our prices, we're just waiting for that.
Then we can move on to number 3, which is the review of proposed prices. First is the sponsorships.
The sponsorships have not changed, so they're the same price. I mean, we've made adjustments from, I think, the second meeting to the third, but they're actually exactly the same. In the advertising is what was presented last time. It's a 48-inch by 32-inch polymetal sign. It's $350 a year for a 3-year commitment. That will cover the cost of the sign. We're not going to actually do any less than that because we figured, in Joe's research, and Jeff concurred to that, it's about $150 for a sign to last 3 years. So we really don't think it's fair to a business or an advertiser to go less than that, but that's basically the cost of it. The district then will still net their $300 a year, which is part of your plan, your capital plan to raise, hopefully $2 million over a 10-year period. It's not going to raise this in 1 month, but people will commit to that, and we see this as something very positive. And the very last one, I added, the change on this one is down at the bottom. We added that 12 by 12 paver, which is $250. That was the suggestion made at the last meeting. Inscription 24 characters, line 3 lines. The block's a little bigger, but it's going to be limited because it's going to be the ones that are going to be the top, probably the middle, and then the very end of the path of pride that goes up there. So we'll have to, if you approve it, we're going to have to say there are X number of those 12 by 12 spots once Jeff meets with. I mean, once they start their design, we'll have a better idea of knowing it. I don't want people to overbuy them thinking they're going to go here. Not that they couldn't create another spot. You could say, well, let's find another spot for the 12 by 12s, but I want to make sure that we're upfront with everybody saying there's X number that are going to be on the path of pride. And you can certainly, once that's sold, you can look for other areas. I mean, who knows what's going to happen if you're going to build a parking lot or a path to a parking lot on the other side to access the other student parking lots. So you're going to have other opportunities, but we want to make sure that we're upfront in the first round of the campaign.
Will we know next Monday when we vote how many 12 by 12s that we're going to sell? Will we
Yes.
have a number?
Because if this is good, between now and next Monday, we're going to get an estimate number of how many of the 12 by 12s can fit in until we at least know. Because in a brochure, we're going to have to say there are X number of 12 by 12s, and because the brochure is going to come right off of everything that you approve. That's all we're going to start off with. You can certainly look for other opportunities, but we'll start with what we know. Yes, I'll have Jeff do that. Because Jeff and Joe and I are going to have to work together to make sure the brochure is accurate. Joe did draft a brochure, but it's still a work in progress, and I guess I could have printed mine off, but it would probably be nice if one of the co-chairs would work with Joe, if anybody has time. Christine. Or both of you. Doesn't really matter, so.
I'll send it to the whole group.
Okay, that's fine. So those are the 3 big items that, if you're good for those, that's what I'd like to put on a motion out of the ad hoc fundraising committee for the board to commit to those prices, and then we'll continue to go. There's a lot of information. I haven't been able to make it up to Grandview Hospital yet to talk to Mark Horn, because I want to see what they do when someone donates money for like a cancer wing. What's the arrangements they have? Because you'll need to know that, because anybody who's going to give big dollars, they're going to want a contract. We're going to have to go through a solicitor, but I want to at least find out more information for you about some of those things.
Well, so any sponsors that we get, if we have a contract, then that would have to come to the board
Absolutely.
as well. We would vote on the
Absolutely.
contract.
Absolutely.
Right, so those details would.
Absolutely, because you're going to have to prove the price to begin with, and you're going to have to prove the contract that your solicitor approves those. That's just like anything else.
Right,
Absolutely.
okay.
And if someone wants to do something outside of what you've posted, they're going to have to bring it to you, and it's going to be a contract, and you're going to have to, agree to explore
It'll
it.
be a separate
And then-
proposal.
Exactly. We just went with the things we thought we might be able to get some sponsorship.
And then number 4 is our plans to promote the campaign, the capital campaign.
I'm going to turn this over to Joe. There's a couple pieces of information about that. One is we need a dollar amount for a budget to run the capital campaign. He has started a brochure. I talked to Kathy Johnson. I asked her if she would be kind enough to stop down for a little bit to look at where the money is going to go. And if it comes through the district, which might be easier, I know that you had some questions as far as the board members, so I've asked her to be here just to ask her, so I'll let you ask her questions.
Either one.
Do you want to start with the budget?
Sure.
Just to-
Well, our goal to start off will be to make a splash right around the first game. September 26th, we have our brochure ready. That will be the official kickoff of the campaign. So I will get together with the media ahead of time, the local newspapers and TV and radio stations, to make sure that they understand what the campaign's about, what our goals are. Of course, this will be after the board approves things on Monday night. So our initial campaign is basically a PR campaign. There's no cost involved in that. The next step after that would be our mailing to alumni. If we were going to proceed with that, we'll get our mailing list from Harris Connect, the folks that do the alumni directory, and then we'll have to determine how many we want to send, and what criteria we'll use to choose who to do that. Once we have that number, you can figure about 65 cents a piece when you consider printing a letter, postage, and an envelope. So if we decided to do $10,650.
Yeah, that's not unreasonable.
And with the mailing campaign, then with Paris Connect, is it possible to do, get contacts via email?
Right,
That type-
we would have,
So we're eliminating that.
we would have
65 cents.
access to both. But I
Okay,
do think there is some value to doing
Sending a letter.
mailing,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay.
And that might be to a select group of alumni that we feel are most likely to be our donors, and then a mass mailing to the rest of the alumni who are out there. The brochure will be designed at no cost, and printing, we will work on a donor to make that available to us at no cost, or we can print it in-house, depending on the quantity and quality. $500 for printing at the most.
That would be the cost if we printed in-house?
No, that would, well, if
Or-
we have to attribute it to a certain cost here, I'd have to know what our per print cost is. 2 sides, 4 color.
For the paper.
I just.
Whatever, is our contract a per impression?
Yes,
Okay.
so 2 side would be 2 pages.
Right, so
Times-
it- whatever that figure is.
Right, so I guess the thing, I mean, will we know that on Monday, because we want to be able to print
Mhm.
next week, so,
We could print our brochure.
right, or
Right.
something, I mean, at least
Right.
something, I mean, maybe we start off with printing, I don't know, a flyer to hand out for pavers, because, I mean, are pavers going to be in the brochure, what do you think?
They're in there, there won't be an order form, because we're cramming a lot of information into a trifold.
Right, that's what you
So-
think, a trifold that would fit in a regular
Regular
envelope?
number 10.
Yeah,
We can make an individual form for the, each of the donation opportunities. We can do that, we can certainly put it online, PDFs online. We could take things through PayPal if we needed to, possibly, if that's a way for people to pay online, make it as convenient as possible.
Yeah, I wonder what's good to hand out at events, like at a football game or another school event. You don't necessarily want an 8.5 by 11
No, I think
paper to hand
That
out.
brochure.
the brochure is what we'll hand out to the
The trifold.
masses. That's what, we're gonna have so many of them, we'll give them away, like, free water.
Okay,
We'll just have a supply then to hand out to anybody and everybody. That's gonna be probably our first point of contact with a potential donor, is that brochure.
right, okay.
So I hear 650 plus $500.
So,
Excuse me, if you take 10,000 times
It's
65 cents, that's 6,500, not
Yeah, not
$650.
See, my math is bad.
Yeah, that's a minor.
10,000.
5,500.
10,000 of a mailing, that would be way too high. We only have 18,000 graduates in the whole school's history. So I don't think we'd be mailing to 10,000. That was just a number I picked off the top.
So pick a number so I can do that.
Let's say
Are
5.
we gonna do a mailing before
It would be,
before the October board meeting? Because that could be something then that we would,
No, I don't
that we
think
could
we'd
bring
be.
up again at the
That's true.
October board meeting.
Yeah, we won't be doing a mailing that soon. I see that as maybe phase 2 of this campaign.
In
Once
order to
we
get
have
the
our
information from Harris and everything.
Once we have all our local people interested and we gain some notoriety for that, then we can reach out to a lot.
so then just the printing cost for the brochure.
Right.
So we could put on the motion on these, with these initial budget of $500.
Right.
But you're gonna look for somebody to donate the printing costs. But will you know that by
Yes.
Monday? Okay, so we can talk about, so then the board will know what we're
Yep.
voting on. It will have an exact number
Right.
before we vote.
And a lot of what we're gonna do is gonna be one-on-one, as you're talking to Mark Horn,
Yeah.
we'll be talking to the banks, we'll be talking to the chambers, a lot of that's gonna be one-on-one.
And brochures to hand
Right.
out as well.
As well as like local sports groups. I had the opportunity to this weekend talk to someone at Green Jackets, and they said by all means, they're willing to help in any way to get this information out, so.
The brochure is gonna really whet the appetite, and we're gonna be able to develop a page on the website that goes into much more detail for everything. Again, think of a 8.5 by 11 sheet folded 3 times, trying to get all this information into that and still make it look good and readable. We're gonna give them the basics, but
Direct them to the website, I think.
And what do you, how many would we print to start?
I would probably go for about 2,500.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like,
I don't think that's enough.
I mean, if we're gonna give them away, like
Right.
free water,
Well,
then, and there
we
are
don't-
7,300 students.
Well, we don't want to go and do a big print run and then decide we have to make some changes. So I always like to do the first print run relatively small,
Okay.
enough to get your,
Basically,
Initial
for the
needs
first, for the first game, so that's gonna be
And
the target. for the
inevitably
first
there'll
game.
be some
Gotcha.
changes that we'll have to make that.
Right, yeah, well, okay, that's true. So
But if
not,
you have
yeah,
more than-
so just
So we
to
won't-
start, yeah,
right.
okay.
Right.
If we had 3,500 or 4,000 people at the first game, which I think is a possibility, it would seem to me that and the cost is relatively low for us to do this print run, you don't want to have nothing for these people. We don't want to run out for that game. So it would seem to me that we ought to print 4,000 or something, just so we have something to hand out for the people at that game.
We want them to go to adults, we don't want them to go to middle school kids.
Okay, so I guess.
I think 2,500 to start for that first game will be plenty. I really do.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is the board's intent or the committee's intent for the expenditures to come out of the monies that you're raising from the capital fund? Or are you planning on, any expenditures coming out of the general fund? Where, I have to ask that question, what are you thinking? Because obviously we have no budget allotted for a capital campaign. Right, so we should be having some conversation about, are the monies that you're going to raise selling these bricks and other things also going to go to offset any costs I would
I
imagine.
think we.
I think
I just want to make this out, again, I think we just need to make sure
Assumption
that's.
that
There's
what it
no other
was, yeah.
alternative, really.
No, we weren't
Okay.
making it an added expense
Okay.
for the district.
Correct.
Well, I would think,
Right, well, that's what we haven't, we've been saying we need to create a budget, but we have, but, I mean, this is the first time we're actually talking numbers, so.
And it's spending something
And actual
before we
costs.
actually get anything coming in. So it's just seed money until something does come in. But everything else, if someone donates money for the team room, out of that donation, it's gonna come the funds for the plaque that goes on the wall. So same with the pavers, part of the cost of pavers, you buy the paver unless it gets donated. So we don't want extra costs on top of it. So until we get money in, this is just a start. We haven't sold brick one yet.
All right, like you were saying for the advertising, it's, right, the cost will
Right.
come out of that. Okay. Anything else, Joe?
I think that would cover the budget.
Okay. What was the other question? Well, we need to now talk about the, where the money's gonna go.
Oh, I think,
So, I mean, so if we set up a district account, or if we use the education foundation, I guess those are the two things to discuss.
right, now, have we had any conversation with the foundation as far as,
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm the liaison between the
Okay.
board and the foundation, so I took that to them. So there are some representatives from the foundation tonight, so I don't, so I guess, do you want to start with how it would work at the school district?
well, actually, Dr. Brevard only asked me today, this morning, about coming this evening, so I don't have a lot of, have not done a lot of research on this, so obviously you're gonna want something by Monday night. Right, so I have some research to do tomorrow, I started it. Certainly, there's two ways we can obviously handle this. One is to collect it, put it into a deferred revenue account for a specific purpose, which is the collection of these dollars for future building of that Common Field. The other, obviously, is through the foundation. I do have some questions out to the authors regarding this whole idea of selling, advertising. Selling kind of denotes something different than a donation. So I do have some questions out to the auditors that I'd like to get answered before I, make sure that we have all our ducks lined up in a row correctly for reporting in any type of financial documents we have to give to donors, and or people that buy things from us. So,
Okay.
a little bit of background.
Oh, so if we sell the advertising, then that might be that might have to be a different
It
account
may
from
have
all
to,
the other
well,
donations.
it'll be maybe some different accounting, and maybe some types of, what do I have to provide them as far as the receipt, those, same with donations, donation for X number of dollars, what kind of receipts we're giving. So there's a little bit of background work that I need to do between now and Monday, so I've started that, so I just don't have, unfortunately.
It's more of a how-to, because other districts are doing it, because the last article Kathy gave me from people in her home area that have been doing it successfully, so it's just making sure that when we do it correctly, it's done in-house.
Well, so I guess how to affect the word, like, is the paver is a donation, you're making a donation, and then you're getting that as like a plaque.
Right.
Instead of being a plaque on the wall, it's a paver on the
On the ground.
ground, right. I mean, and that's what the hospitals do too. I mean, they put, I was just down at Temple Hospital, I mean, they just have their bricks in the wall, right by, in front of every elevator, so.
The scoreboard with someone's name on it is clearly advertising, but the business is going to write off advertising just like I would write off a donation as an individual. So it's doing it the correct way, so they get credit when they actually do their taxes every year. So there's a gain for them as well when they do that. We have a business accounting process. So we just need to do it right. We do it here.
Yeah, and I guess so, I mean, would it be difficult for the district to have its own, set up an account, to have it be for that, for a specific purpose?
Oh, no, that's, I mean, that's not a problem at all. I mean, we can set up a separate checking account, we can set up, obviously the accounting itself will be separate. We will have its own account codes, set of account codes specifically allotted for
So it's
revenue and
mainly-
expenditures.
it's mostly a question of how to handle the differences there.
Right. So it's more in the business office side, and I'm gonna have to make sure that everything is
On the accounting
on
end.
the accounting end as well.
I was gonna say, the information as far as the foundation.
Right, I don't know, so does anybody from the foundation, I mean, we talked about.
Yeah, we
the-
talked about, are we at public comment?
Well, it's not
Is that where we are?
comment, but.
Yeah, if we can interact with you. Yeah, there's been discussion throughout this whole process, right, as to what the foundation's role would be. We've had discussion internally as an organization. I know there's been discussion in this room. Mr. Thompson, you brought it up during the community summit, right?
Could you
That was-
introduce yourself, please?
That was 3 years ago. So
Who is this?
as the Education Foundation, we're here to support anything in the district. I mean, as in its truest sense, our role is to support the education of the students at Pennridge, right? And part of that's the social aspect of it. Being up at that field, it's a neat place. We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We would have to set up to do the accounting for it. Right now, our accountant's a volunteer. So we would have some issues and some costs associated with that. I don't think we're built to raise large sums of monies ourselves, but I've had conversations with Jeff Hollenbach, and now that the decision's made, now that we're at Hellman, we would like to try to step up and be whatever we could be. There was talk about us doing a car raffle, right? Come to the games, get a car from A&T. We did some background work on it. They've done that type of thing before. It offers exposure to the capital campaign. It offers something for folks to see when they come to games, maybe when they come to basketball games. I'm not exactly sure how often A&T wants to drive a car out for our events, but that would all have to be something that could be hashed out pretty quickly. We've had conversations with A&T Chevrolet, with their marketing company, so that's something we might be able to move on pretty quickly. So, I mean, that's where we are as an organization. I don't know that we're built to raise large sums of money, but we're certainly built to help, and we're certainly set up in a situation where we can be helped, so.
That's an example of
Who is this guy?
other fundraising.
I don't know. Anybody know who he is?
Which is great.
Okay, so, I mean, I guess, no, I don't know, so we, at the, I guess, as the board, I mean, do we want to just?
Yeah.
Just as the board say, do we just want to have it come through the district, or do we want it to have it go through the foundation and involve the foundation that way? I mean, because it's been brought up a couple of times about the role of the foundation.
In my opinion, it should go to the district. I think what Bob has just said, and if we're going to be raising a significant amount of money, the monies need to go directly to the district, in my opinion. Certainly, any way the foundation could help would be greatly appreciated and helpful, but to handle a lot of money at this point, I don't think.
Dave, that's a legitimate concern on our part too, because you're right. If somebody steps up and says, I want to donate, I'll throw a number, 80 grand for a scoreboard. I don't know how much the scoreboard is. I think maybe it was 40, yeah, right. Then that makes me a heck of a salesman because they're only 40 grand. That's one $40,000 lump sum that you're asking an organization outside of your district to handle. That's a true story.
So I think the foundation role is more of a support role here in like what you're saying with the fundraisers and what Dave, you said, that the money go through the district, not expect you to fundraise.
I think I see our role as more of an enabler if there aren't other easy ways to do it. I mean, our role more of a support and to do fundraisers. I think we're willing to step up and maybe do something because it helps our exposure. Our goals as an organization are more academic and arts than sports, although some would argue sports are art. So as a tool to give us increased exposure in the district and increased exposure to the different constituencies within the district, I think it has value to us there. It does really meet our core mission because part of the educational enhancement of the students is social and academic and athletic. So I think from that perspective, that meets our mission. So, we're certainly willing to listen.
Thank you.
All right, so, you'll have information for us next week, Kathy, how it'll all be set up and needs to be done, okay. Speaking of other fundraisers, Jeff Loeffler shared information that Rich Sparling from the Bucksmont Torch. Were they called Bucksmont Torch? And it was the soccer team that uses the field that they were interested in doing a fundraiser for the stadium. So I did talk to him, and he's thinking of something in the spring, and I said, when we need to get started, and then we can talk more about what they can do and how they can help. So that's a positive development.
That's great.
Yeah, and then you had in here about the, this company that will find corporate sponsors.
Yeah, Kathy had shared this article. It's a great article about companies that you hire that actually raise funds for you. And I'm just sharing. Kathy, you can jump in whenever you want, but they've been successful in several school districts, not just one school district. And I thought you at least ought to see. Now, understand that when you read the article, they do take 30%. And so at some point in the campaign, you may look to get somebody. I would not recommend you do it at the very beginning of the campaign, because at the beginning is where all the excitement is, and people are going to, be willing to do everything they can. Groups that want to do a scoreboard or something bigger will do it at the beginning, and when you start slowing down, it might be worth it to look at a company that's been successful doing that. But I'm putting it out there now, so at least you have that in the back of your head. I don't recommend starting off with that. I think there's going to be enough momentum that we can. We're not even working on. You won't even make a decision on what you're doing until February, and so maybe some of the funds will be raised by then, and people then will know what it is the stadium's going to look like. So we can start working on the pieces that we've had some interest in, some fielders from different people in the community that have brought to this committee. So we'll work on that in the meantime. But don't not think about this, because at some point, the rest of us, we'll get back to our regular jobs, and you'll still need to raise funds.
I know Christine just said, at the last meeting, there was a point was brought up by Celeste about involving the booster clubs as well. That, in regard, I think the point was made about the pavers and trying to involve some of the outside clubs to help in the fundraising, and then possibly put something back towards their clubs. And I think we all agree that that's a good idea. I think my feeling is that right now, capitalize on just getting this information out here. What we're doing with the brochure, that type of information. There's going to be, I think, a lot of positive with just opening this field and everything. And again, like the advertising, maybe wait and then look to get the other groups involved. Because, instead of initially trying to do all of these things at one time too. I don't know if anybody's feeling.
And it's not fair to them, because right now, all those booster groups and the PTOs already have set their fundraisers for the year. They work on them in spring. But it's something we need to talk about toward the second half of this year, because if that's something the board wants to do, let them know what it is, how it gets done, so they can start thinking about, do we want to do this as one part of our fundraisers, or can we part of it, part of the raising funds thing for the school district down the road. So I would say you need to work on that during this year, but you don't need, I don't think you need to make a decision right now, so I'm not.
And then later work to involve all the other groups that, are involved with this, or that are gonna, possibly use the facility or just benefit from it in some way.
Yep, invite them in and have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
We look at, it's a 10-year campaign.
I guess so, Kathy, would be, I know one thing that we had a question last time about, to whom do we make the checks payable when people donate money? And so would it just be the school district, or would it have a specific name? Like, would the account be created with a specific
I
name on it?
envision it being just Pennridge School District with a note capital campaign in the note section, in the memo section. So again, I'll have all that
Okay,
for you as a packet.
right. And so, and I guess the other, are we calling the campaign the Rams on the Ridge?
I believe so.
Yeah.
That was what we.
What all do you want to vote on next?
Yeah, do we need to vote on the name, or do we just say that?
Do we have to vote on the name, or do we,
Because
it's a proposal as a whole?
You can propose it that way. I mean, with the Path of Pride, you know, you didn't vote on that, but that's a great name too. So I'm just, you need to make some decision so that at least don't have to worry about, you know, creating new names. So it doesn't matter to me. If you adopt it, you're going to adopt it with the price. What we have is it's called, you can adopt the, I think it's the Rams on the Ridge Capital Campaign. In the price for the pavers, it's called Path of Pride pavers, even though they will be other places. So you let me know what you need to
I
have to
think
make
we
a
were
vote.
all agreeable on that, weren't we, at the last meeting, as far as the names?
Okay,
Yeah.
if you need to vote on it, whatever, I just thought we all like, when we have our conversation.
I mean, those are two aspects of the brochure. Joe, are you, like, how is it being labeled? I guess we'll see.
Rams
when we
on
see
the
it.
Ridge Capital Campaign to
Okay.
support multi-team athletics at Pennridge High School.
Okay.
Is that the word?
So that's basically the titling on it. Okay.
I did call the donation opportunities, the platinum, gold, silver level, green. I call that the green and white club.
Okay. So I guess the motion should,
Green and white club. Jeez, Joe.
the motion should reflect that then, that we're voting on the Rams on the Ridge.
I'll put it all down there. We vote on the campaign. I can have all those things, that's right, just make sure I get down there. So it's the green and white level.
Green and white club is the name, is the group of people that'll be making those donations at platinum, gold,
Oh, I
silver.
don't care what you
green.
call it. I thought you were changing the name of the
No.
level. All right. We have to meet Joe after the meeting. Okay, so we're gonna vote on, actually, campaign. Let me have the whole campaign thing, the Rams on the Ridge Capital Campaign, adopt that as your target. So we'll vote on that, that's one. This will be one voting item. Donation opportunities will be a second one. And that includes the name Path of Pride paper, so that will be right,
Just what's on
right in
here.
that. Advertising opportunities, that's the one, we're only
That's the
starting off
signs.
with one before we do anything else.
Well, are we, the donation opportunities, that's what you're calling
That's what
the
I'm
green
calling
and white,
club.
The top part, he's gonna put that under the green and white club.
right, the donation, because,
It's
so it
platinum.
has a little name to it rather than just saying here,
Right.
because we,
Right.
you don't want to call them sponsors, because the sponsors are something
Right, this is
different.
the club you join.
Right.
Donation opportunities for the Pennridge High School Stadium project, and now it's called the Green and White Club.
And then, but would we get any information about the cost of putting up a plaque or a wall, or?
Yeah, I talked to Impact Signs in Perkins, he hasn't given me the firm price, but he knows what we're looking for. It
Okay.
would be a somewhat weatherproof, but possibly under some color plaque.
Similar, you mean, Christine, similar to the one that I have the picture of from Council Rock,
Right.
where
Would
the
have like a
flags would go.
plexiglass front to it and then individual plaques behind it.
I have these 4 items, and I'm going to have in there initial advertising budget of $500 to be offset by future revenue from the campaign. So I'll put that down as well, so you know that it's gonna go back when we collect some of these funds in. We need to have some upfront seed money.
Right, but to say that's initial, and I mean that the
Correct.
cost
Correct.
will be, you know, it will be adjusted as we need. And then, do we need to vote or say that, you know, anything, the cost of any signs or plaques or pavers or anything comes out of the money received? Does that need to be a vote?
In here, it says include signage. I mean, everything we have says include signage.
That's built into the price. It's in
Right, it's
the,
built into, we built everything into the price except for his advertising budget, which will come out of the general funds that you raise. Everything else is pretty much built in.
Okay. Well, it doesn't say that on the advertising one.
I'll put that under the motion for sponsorship, donation,
Yeah, and then the
advertise-
donations, it doesn't,
and
the
advertise.
papers, it doesn't say anything like that.
And even the donation is gonna go on a plaque, so that it's gonna be part of, so I'll just, under each one of those motions, I'll just put down, part of the donation amount, sponsorship amount, advertisement will cover the signage. So I'll put that, when you vote, you'll vote on all that together.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about whether or not we're going to make an attempt to put this into a larger context? There have been some questions raised by some people in the audience talking about whether or not, hopefully this would be applied to other, Bob had already said that the foundation is certainly, one of the primary is academics. And is there going to be any effort to say that the district, not just Pennridge, but all districts are struggling with the funding that's coming from the state? And we're trying to help the taxpayers, so we will be doing this on a regular basis. At least that's what I'm proposing. Are we going to be doing this on a regular basis for other reasons, not just the stadium? Is this the beginning of something, and that's what we talked about at the summit, is this the beginning of something that in order to try to help the taxpayers on a continuing basis, that we will be asking the community to help us for worthy parts of expenses that the district is going to. Are we going to make any attempt to put this into some kind of larger context now? or
We
not?
talked about that briefly, I think, at the first meeting, and, basically the discussion was, we want to see how successful this is, and if we can be successful with this, then yes, by all means, I think our goal would be to continue it then, to help offset anything else. Obviously, just education costs, like we know, are rising. So if we can be successful with this, then continue using it for other aspects.
You're asking that what Suzette just said be shared when we do this, because that's the whole goal, is we start this and want to build off of it.
Yeah, again, I'm trying to put this into not just looking at the business value of doing this advertising or whatever, but to say, look, your district needs your help. The funding from the state is inadequate, and we are struggling to meet the requirements. We had people come to our meetings over the last couple of years, especially a couple of years ago when we chose not to raise the taxes. The people were coming saying, look, you need to raise the taxes. And I think Lee Rush and I were the only two that gave a check to Kathy that said, look, anybody that wants to donate more to the district, here, just, sign up. And that's what we're really kind of asking here, that people have the opportunity and have the wherewithal to do this, if they would be willing to step up and help the district when we really need it. And this is just the beginning, in my opinion anyway.
You want to communicate it in a way, Dave, so that it's not just as if this is a once and done fundraiser.
That's what I'm saying. Because
just for this one sole purpose.
Because I believe really that there is a need, and again, that was the purpose of the summit, to try to get community support, local support, dollars that are going to be raised locally that will benefit this district, not going someplace else or anywhere else. That's all. That's what my concern is.
And I agree. I think it's a good vehicle to, it's a good starting point, and, we have to go with it from there then. Hopefully based on, successes that we see,
I hope that we're
and
able
we
to
can
do that.
continue to move on with it, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I had, just a question for Mrs. Johnson about, there's been some discussion, the money when it comes in, so you said it'll be in a separate account, but then do we transfer it to the capital projects budget? Would you recommend that we use it to pay down debt, or just use it for future,
Well, I guess that really is,
That'll be a
what,
decision.
that is
Should be a vote
that
by
is
the
a
board.
decision as to how you do want to raise these dollars. I think if you're going to raise dollars, you should have
Absolutely.
a reason and a purpose in how you want those to be used. So I think that's something that definitely has to be voted on as to, because people want to know, if I want to give money, I want to kind of know what are you going
What's
to use
happening
it?
with it?
Yeah. So are you going to raise dollars, you're going to raise these capital dollars for
stadium?
for the stadium, for the the ongoing upkeep of the stadium, and I think that's what you're talking about, the ongoing.
Well, we're talking about the building of phase 2 is really what we're talking about, raising the money for that. So the only issue is it's hard you can't raise all that money before we have to vote. Hopefully there'll be some money and there'll be some commitment, but if it's a 10-year campaign, do we say it's to offset the cost of the stadium, and then it just goes into?
Right, and that's what you're doing, then it just goes
Right.
back into
I don't
capital.
know if that's-
Why wouldn't it retire debt?
Or you can use it to pay the debt service associated with the $10 million that we that we borrowed.
Yes.
But that, remember, that $10 million was for, not just for Hellman Field.
Right.
That included all the other capital
capital
projects. So it might just make sense to put it back into capital because, we're not putting money into capital right now.
You've got 10 million
Kind of
bucks.
sucked up some of that money. We're not having large fund balances to be transferring that money over there because we're gonna continue to have capital projects that need, driveways that need to be repaired, roofs that need to repair. Eventually, the turf itself is going to have to be replaced. You're gonna put a building up there, eventually you'll need a new roof, many years after most of us are not here, but again, so I think you definitely want to make a determination so that it's fixed and it just doesn't all of a sudden become a blur when, again, some of us are no longer here. So I do think you want to be very
And
specific.
designated.
Right, so does it work to say, okay, we're raising the money, when this phase 2 is done, and we're still raising the money to pay for that, then that goes in, and you can say we're putting the money into the capital,
To replenish the capital.
to replenish what was spent on
That's correct.
Yes.
the
Right, so
stadium.
that frees that money up for the other capital projects that need to continue with driveways and roofs and.
Right.
Anything else? Anybody else?
That specific language ought to be in the brochure too.
Yeah.
And then I think that needs to be, does that need to be in the vote next week as well?
Sure it does.
Yeah, so that it's clear.
Let me, you'll have the 5 parts to the motion, but let me craft the motion in general that will read to that, and then just put down, there are 5 parts to this motion that will be, and I'll write it the way we had to offset, the funds will go into the capital campaign to offset the cost, or part of the cost, used to improve the Hellman Field.
And can you just, check with Mrs. Johnson that it's
Yep.
worded correctly
I will
wherever
check with
the,
her, yep.
for the
So I'll do
accounting?
that, I'll do the motion, let me send it out to the 2 committee people to make sure you're okay, because the agenda goes out on Wednesday, so I'll make
Okay.
sure we're on that tomorrow.
Okay. Anything else? No? Any comment? Mr. Linder?
Thank you.
Would be anything without it?
I got a lot of comments. Doesn't work. Robert Linden, West Rock Hill Township, taxpayer. In the corporate world, this project would be a project, would have a charge number, we would have an account, series of accounts, and everything that was put into the project, every effort and cost would be accounted for, including labor, time, material, and maybe even overhead. If you were really going to measure how successful this campaign is, you need to know all your costs. And I assume you're capturing all your costs. No, I assume you're not. I don't know how much Jeff Loeffler's time, maybe somebody's putting up pulled signs and such that cost labor. So let's say you're spending the taxpayers' money doing this, raising the money. Now you've raised a certain amount of money, you should know how much it cost you to raise that money. Then you're going to put the money into the capital account, so you're really moving some of that money that came in from the taxpayers and paid salaries, and paid for screws and nails and hammers and tools, and you're moving that into the capital budget, where now you say, we've got a lot of money and we can buy some more air conditioners or something like that. And that's what I see as subsidizing by the taxpayer the fund. In other words, you move the money from one account to another by doing it through donations. I mean, because your donations can look very, very prosperous if you don't account for the money that it costs to raise the donations. And if you don't put those monies back from the donations into the accounts they came out of, then you're just moving money. And basically then the taxpayers are subsidizing some other effort. That's the way I see your your fundraising campaign. I think that's the way it should be accounted. I think Kathy is familiar with this, and that's the way I'd like to see it counted.
Could I just ask you to clarify?
Yeah.
Do you mean that like Dr. Bavard's time?
Right.
To sit here for X number of dollars, and he doesn't get paid overtime, so he's off the clock now, so it really doesn't cost anything.
I understand, but there are people that do get paid overtime, and there are costs. There are costs for toner, and there are costs for paper, there's costs for ink. And I've certain secretaries maybe they get overtime or something like that, and they get involved in typing up memos. Then you're gonna have certain maintenance costs. If you put up advertising, you put up signs and such like that, when if something blows down, needs to be repainted, there's costs associated with doing it.
Joe's gone out.
These are the costs you should be capturing, so you really understand what you're doing.
I'm a volunteer.
Do you volunteer?
I'm volunteering my time on this.
So it'll all be after 5?
Whenever it is, it's volunteer.
Well, that's
No, that's
fine.
bullshit.
It
What?
accounts for that. That's
It's
why it
what?
should account for all this.
Mrs.
I'm a
Furlong, can
volunteer
you
as
please?
well.
Huh?
I'm a volunteer.
I know you are, but I'm saying that there's a lot of people that aren't volunteering, it's their job. And you're not even accounting for overhead costs, because you really do have overhead costs. The building, the electricity, and such like that. If you're doing anything involved, you're using the facilities to do it. And you should try to estimate some cost, so you understand what you're really accomplishing. And then I think that the donations are I don't think you have to pay any sales tax, right, on donations. I think that for sports donations, right? I don't know about for other
I'm
reasons.
checking into it.
Yeah. And I know that the school's not a 501c3, right? But the foundation is a 501c3, so I don't know what their costs are. It might be more incentive for people to donate money to the foundation and then have the foundation give you the money, I don't know, minus their costs. You have to see how profitable that is. Because there might be more incentive for someone out there to donate to the foundation where they can do a tax deduction.
I can do a tax deduction at school.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
I
school's
think
a tax
to the
deduction.
school district, it can be tax deductible
Is it?
too. Yeah, we didn't find out for sure, but I
But
think.
is it for athletic only, or they can
Anything given
do,
to school.
if they're doing advertising, is it really tax deductible? I think these are the things you want to look into.
Well, if you're advertising,
Advertising
it's
is-
a business and that's an expense.
That's right, it's a different thing if you're a
It's different
business.
from a
but
donation.
And that's where advertising would normally be a.
I'm just saying you should understand what,
Understood.
Thank you. Is that it?
that's it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Gotcha.
Hi, Claire Steinberg, still East Rockville Township. I missed what Mrs. Yardley was saying in the beginning with option 2, something about Landis Block. I couldn't hear what you said. I don't know if you remember.
Oh, there's, Mr. Loeffler has said that Landis Block had expressed, there's a possibility that they might donate pavers,
Okay,
but we're still, that's not a definite, so
okay,
we're pursuing that.
okay. I
Yes.
heard it and I was like, what's she saying? I know you're not supposed to ask questions, so I wrote it down.
Yeah,
And I thought of another, well, actually one other fundraiser, having an antique car show. You sell parking spots for like $15-20 and have cars come in. There's not really any much of it, or I don't think there's a lot of expense to it. They just pay for spots, they park their cars. I know you can check it out with Dairy Queen, they do it a lot. And Joe, for printing, Vistaprint, will they be cheaper than doing from here? We just had postcards made up for our synagogue for, I don't know, $30 or something.
Think of it.
I can try that out too.
thank you.
Thank
Sure.
you. Anyone else?
I got some. Are you taking cash donations at the football field?
Can you say your name for the?
I didn't know that was required anymore. I asked who this gentleman is and I
Wasn't
still...
during public comment.
I wasn't during public comment. Can you please
And
state your name?
I
and
invited
your
Who
him.
is this individual? I'd like to know who he is.
Can you state your name, please?
My name is Sue Furlong, and I live in West Rock Hill Township.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And I'm just curious who the other people are that got to speak.
Oh, I asked Mr. Hipp to speak, he's the president of the Education Foundation.
Okay, thank you. I don't know why that was such a problem. Will there be cash donations accepted at the different events and venues for this?
No.
Okay,
I
so there
don't
will
think
not be
so.
any cash collected? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Aaron Landis from Hilltown Township. An idea for you on your printing. You talk about a trifold brochure. They're quite expensive, obviously, if you're trying to get a lot of them out there. You talked about just reserving them for the adults. However, I think if you could find a way to get that in the kids' hands, there may be a trash issue for those that don't want it, they'd throw them all over. But if you did like a buck slip size, you could get 3, 4 out of one sheet of paper.
Say that term again.
Buck slip,
Oh,
it's like a third of a piece of paper typically, sorry. I will not see it, but basically what the idea would be to drive them, put one single statement that would drive their action to a website. If that were in their hands and got them excited about being a part of that field, I could see people in the stands going online on their phones during the game. So I think it would lower your printing costs and might, you get a lot more of them out there. You might get quicker reaction.
So you're saying just a smaller paper, less info, just to catch their attention?
Honestly, it could be a business card.
Business card.
Except that's a little too thick in the stock. So
Yeah.
the idea, it could be I don't know, you could get 8 of them out of here possibly. Just small, it doesn't matter the size, just a small piece of paper, one motivational statement that gets them driven to check out a website. They do it on their mobile devices during the game. Lastly, I don't know all that much about what you guys do in the funding and all the intricacies of it. And having cameras shining in your face like this all the time, and I know it's not fun. I would encourage you to think about the idea of, if I'm somebody out in the public that's wanting to donate money to this, I'm going to be moved much more if I know that money is reserved specifically for this item that's motivating me emotionally. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?